Hey! All right. Now the question is, do other people see me too? Woohoo! Hello there! Guess what, folks? This is up there on the, I'd say, top five terrible tech talks that I have ever done because there is zero worse than not being able to get on stage. Thank you so much to the gang at Dave Security for finally letting me go. You know what? Usually, when I start this presentation, I actually do a whole story about the worst presentations I have ever seen, but I don't need to do that now because we just unbelievably had a great example of probably the worst things that can happen to a speaker ever. So we're going to completely skip over story time and move right on. Hi there. My name is Bobbie Carlton. I have many, many jobs, including embarrassing myself as a speaker. I totally meant to do that. Yes, Jennifer, I totally did meant to do that. But no, I didn't. Um, my first job is I have a day job of running a PR and marketing firm. The night job for many years was a startup events company in Boston called Innovation Nights. And the dream job is Innovation Women, which is an online speaker bureau. So it is designed to get more women on stage at conferences and events because two-thirds of all conference speakers are men, which leaves women out of so many business and career opportunities. I am here to talk about public speaking, and I am so enamored of public speaking, quite frankly, because it is an incredible opportunity. It is a chance to get visibility that can drive careers and drive businesses and just so, so much good stuff. So, today, we are here to tackle terrible tech talks. And believe me, this is a story for the ages. Um, if you are watching a tech talk and you are bored, and by the way, that is bored watching the speaker, not watching the blank screen because the speaker can't get on stage. Just making sure everybody knows that. If you are wondering what the speaker is talking about. It's all a little bit too abstract for you. If you are annoyed because you are wasting your time, because you could have been at another session and could have been watching something amazing, but here you are watching this sad sack on stage or not even on stage. So if you are all of these things and you look around and you see the audience departing, you could be watching what we call a bad presentation. All right. Bad presentations are boring, annoying, abstract, and the audience is departing. So, what makes a talk really, really bad? And by the way, can you tell I so love puns? If that talk is colorless, if it is humorless, if it is just deathly dull, I think one of the things that we all need to think about as speakers is we are not just imparting information, we are also entertaining as well. If there is too much jargon, all right, I think as speakers in the tech industry, we probably have kind of cornered the market on jargon, right? Like if there was an award being given out for too much jargon being used, the tech industry should be clearing the shelf right now. When you are here to serve an audience, you need to use language that they understand. If I am a sheep farmer and I am giving a presentation, and if I am the only person who leaves that presentation knowing the difference between smit marks and rattle paint, then I have failed as a speaker. By the way, just want to make sure that everybody knows what smit marks means, okay? Smit marks are the paint that you put on your sheep so you know which is your flock. Rattle paint is so when you know your flock is expanding. What they do is they put a dab of paint on their boy sheep, and when the girl sheeps also have paint on them, well, you know what's going on there. All right. If you, as a speaker, are trying to make too many points, if you're cramming too much in, I actually do have a term for this. I call it cramming. If you're trying to boil the ocean, if you are trying to give the history of the topic that you are speaking on, you are probably bringing up too many points. Hold on one second, folks. All right, moving on. If there is too much detail in your presentation and not enough value, you might be committing a sin known as being annoying and producing bad tech talks, right? Okay. If I see a ton of text on a slide, if there's way too much for me to comprehend as a viewer, you know that this is not going to be something that people value. All right. I have seen presentations where it feels like somebody is reading me a manual. If there is nothing actionable about your presentation, right? One of the things that happens when you are applying for speaking opportunities is often the conference will ask you for takeaways. What can the audience learn from your presentation? What can they go away with and actually use? These takeaways are trying to avoid presentations where there is nothing actionable and there are no clear objectives. We also want to point out that sometimes the presentation being bad is really due to the speaker. If the speaker is half asleep, if they're bored, if they are boring, this all really doesn't contribute to your enjoyment or your knowledge. Because when you see a speaker like that, they are not telling you why you should get excited about a presentation. If the speaker on stage can't be excited, why should you be excited? A speedy speaker is also a problem, right? Presentations are not races. If you're trying to put too much into your presentation, you're probably speeding things up. I would love to know if you have seen a presentation where the speaker starts off something like this. I have got so much information to put in today, but we're going to get through it all. Like they are speeding through their presentation and they're missing out on some incredible opportunities as a speaker. One of the things that you can do as a speaker to provide emphasis is to pause. There is power in the pause. And by the way, when you're on stage, pauses feel a lot longer than they do to the viewer. Just remember that. Another problem, we run across this on a regular basis, is the self-serving speaker. When you are doing presentations, you need to be up there in service to the audience, not to yourself. A lot of times you'll see speakers who, quite frankly, get on stage to do a sales pitch. If you are doing that, you are serving no one but yourself. People don't want to be sold to from the stage. They also don't want to get a sales pitch unless they're interested in actually buying your product. So think about what you can do to serve your audience before you get on stage. Now, let's talk. We've just gone through all the bad tech talks. We also started off with a demonstration of a bad tech talk. But thing we're going to do now is we're going to go and look at better tech talks. What are the things that we can do to create better tech talks? Number one, tell us a story. Turn your teachings into a story. There is a reason that people have sat around campfires and told each other stories over the years. That's because there is learning in those, and people remember stories. Get to know your audience. Here's a little trick that I use whenever I am being invited to speak to a conference or an event. I will go to the conference or event website and I will look for the sponsor package, because the sponsor package is filled with information that you can use to get to know who is in the audience. When a conference is selling sponsorships, they have to provide demographic information. They will tell you the titles of people who are in the audience. There's a lot of good information in there. And if you don't have a sponsor package, you can also ask the event manager. They will give you lots of great information. The next thing that the better talks do is they solve the audience's problems. They stop their pain. People come to see a talk because they have an issue, a problem. They're trying to learn something new to solve problems. If you can identify problems and then provide an answer, you win and the audience wins. There's also a little trick I like to call the rule of three. The rule of three is things are always more interesting in a trio. They're more humorous, they're more satisfying, they're more memorable, and they're more effective. Now, I actually did something in this particular slide, breaking the rule of three. If you do not write down the 4 things that I put in the rule of three, you will forget one of them. 50% of people will forget the 4th item, and it doesn't matter which one, by the time that I've finished with the presentation. You can actually test yourself on this. 90% of people will not remember it a week from now. If that was a grouping of 3, almost everybody in the room would remember it. So it's just a little interesting test that you can use when you are presenting. But grouping things in 3s, if you think about it, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Larry, Moe, Curly. 3s are something that is so memorable. When you're remembering a phone number, it's grouped into a group of 3. So think about that the next time you're doing a presentation, and think about all the different ways that you can group things in 3s. You can also use things like figures of speech. Okay, I always think back to 10th grade English, Mrs. Beck. Mrs. Beck would be so proud of me because I use analogies, I use metaphors, similes, idioms. This whole presentation where I am showing you sheep instead of problems is a grand metaphor. So think about what you can do to make your presentations more interesting and use your 10th grade English lessons. Using data properly, okay? When we look at a picture, this picture, for example, and all we see are far away, tiny little dots, pretend those are data points. You have to point them out to be able to see them and notice them. How many of you have done a presentation where you actually had to show a spreadsheet on a slide? Totally useless information unless you use a device to point out the important parts. Maybe you use that big red arrow. Maybe you highlight things on the screen. But if you only have one data point per slide, it is much more recognizable and easily understandable. If you've ever gone through and looked at presentations where they're presenting numbers, for example, just putting one number on a slide at a time is super helpful and will help people remember and understand. Now, little test. Going back into the session chat, how many people remember the presentation, the data point that I had early on in this presentation? What percentage of speakers are men? Anyone? So if you remember that, it's because I put one data point on a slide. Okay. So another point that you can use, yep, 66%. Thank you, Jennifer. So people do remember these things. 2/3 of all conference speakers are men. Another thing that you can do is make your points counterintuitive. One of the things that makes presentations dull, boring, abstract, all the bad things is when people get a sense of they already know stuff. If your audience feels like they could go off and find the information that you're presenting with 30 seconds and Google, you have failed. So if you give them something that's a little counterintuitive, it's memorable, but it's also interesting. In this particular case, I'll tell you something counterintuitive. Number one, we all think about sheep as somewhat dull animals, right? They are not exactly what we call the brain trust of the animal world. What if I told you that sheep have incredible memories for faces? They can recognize a person that they saw years ago if they just see them today. Sheep have incredible face memories. They remember things. That's a little bit counterintuitive. It can't be the whole reason for a presentation unless you're a sheep farmer, but it is a counterintuitive point. Think about the things that you can use in your presentations that get people to sit up and take notice. These are hooks. These are things that capture people's attention. And always do everything you can to make your talks more fun. Hand out bingo cards. Divide the room into two different teams and have them compete. Become a little bit of an entertainer yourself. You can add games. You can think about scorecards or giveaways. Polls and engagement are nice. Yes, jokes, funny things, they're all terrific. Or maybe you just want to have every one of your slide include a sheep. But everything that you do to make your talks a little bit more fun is not only appreciated by the audience, but again, it makes it more memorable and more effective. Now, there is a little bit of speaking advice that I would love it if we all just forgot about it. Okay. I think about this as the common speaking tips that I tend to object to. Number one, you don't need to introduce yourself immediately. When you are walking onto a physical stage, you are often introduced. Somebody is announcing you, they're introducing you, there's a round of applause. That is the point where you have the majority of the audience's attention. There is a momentum that is happening at that point. Don't squander that momentum with rehashing your introduction. You can wait a little bit on that until it makes sense, or you can skip right into the exciting part of your presentation. I don't know if you've ever seen adventurers presenting. There are a lot of entertaining presentations, and I've seen some variation of the "there I was hanging off the side of a cliff," and the audience is caught up in that. So introducing yourself immediately is not something you really need to do. Another variation of that is common advice I've heard is start with a joke. Not everybody's a comedian. And also, gotta admit, not everybody laughs at the same thing. I think I'm hysterical. Not everybody agrees. And another thing that I hear in terms of advice is you got to dumb it down. No, you don't necessarily have to. You may have to explain things, you may have to define things, but not necessarily dumbing it down. Now, it is your turn. And if you have your phone with you, you can do this little mini workshop. What I have done is I've also shared this in the media share, and I'm not sure if that means you guys get access to it or if I have to share it on the screen, but I'm going to switch and I'm going to go over to my presentation. Now I'm going to give everybody a minute or two. If you want to grab this, pull up your camera, put a little camera on this, and it will take you to a Google document. And this will allow you to address your own presentations. Here's the document. And let's see here. So we're going to start off with, as you're thinking about your presentations, you're going to start off with what is your big idea? All right. This is not your title, but your overall concept. If you are working on creating a presentation, don't start with the title, start with the concept. Think about that Venn diagram with the 3 circles, not the bad one, but the good one. And think about your area of expertise, what you're passionate and excited about, how you want to be remembered by your audience, and also think about what the audience needs. Then you can start thinking about a title and a description of your presentation. And that presentation description, it should include information like, what do you want to accomplish? What level of person will find this helpful? Is it for experts? Is it for beginners? Does it solve a problem that the audience has? And then you need to also think about the outcome. If the problem isn't solved, what will happen for that audience? Is there a downside to not working on this problem? And how do you envision the audience will feel? Are they going to feel empowered? Are they going to feel excited? Are they going to feel thoughtful? What will your audience feel as they are leaving the room? The next step, as you're preparing, is to think about the takeaways. Remember, you want a presentation that's actionable. What will the audience learn? And then what can they do with this knowledge or this information? And if you can, think about something that is surprising, something that is counterintuitive. What will make your audiences appreciate you and really feel that what you offered them is unique, what will make your presentation and you different from anything they've ever seen before? All right. How many people have seen a technical presentation with sheep in it before? Probably not a lot. Okay. Then you need to think about the structure. Is it going to be a workshop or is it going to be a speech? If you took the QR code and went to the website to download this worksheet, you can download it and it is yours, and you can actually work this process for your next presentation. All right, we're going to go back to the presentation. Now, I always think about what I'm doing as not the best example of all the speakers that I represent. All right. I run a speakers bureau and I do presentations myself, but I have so many speakers that are so much better than I am. I love getting feedback. Always be getting feedback for your presentations. If you are interested in giving me feedback, you can scan this QR code and you can put in the code terrible, because it was, or you can go to talk.ac/Bobbie Carlton if you don't have your phone up or you want to do it on your computer and give me feedback. As a speaker, think about how you can get feedback, because I will tell you that your friends and the audience want you to succeed. And what that means is when you come off the stage, all of your friends will give you pats on the back. They will tell you how wonderful you were, even if you weren't so wonderful, because they want you to succeed. They understand that public speaking is hard for some people. It makes people nervous. So they don't want to make you more nervous by giving you feedback about how you could have been faster, how you could have been slower, how you could have done a better job getting the technology right to begin with. Like there's all these different things that feedback will help you avoid next time. And one of the things that is the biggest help is getting a video of yourself speaking and watching yourself. So if you want to give me feedback, you can scan this QR code, you can go to this website, and you can give me feedback. Think about all of the different ways that you can get feedback for yourself. All right, now we went through a lot. We also had a whole bunch of technical issues to begin with. I would love it if you shared any questions that you have, and I'm happy to answer those. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about questions while we're waiting for people to drop some questions into the chat. One of the things about asking a question is it is a fantastic way to dip your toe in the waters of public speaking. A lot of people think about public speaking as a single person on stage all by themselves. There are so many different opportunities for public speaking. You could be on a panel. A panel is people sitting in the comfy seats, having a conversation. There's no presentation involved. It's really so much less pressure than doing a presentation by yourself. So you could be doing a panel, you could be a co-presenter, you could be doing podcast guesting, you could be doing a webinar or a presentation like this virtually. Or if you want to get started with public speaking, you can dip your toe in the water by asking a question. When you're at a live event and the speaker is finished and they ask you, "Is anybody in the audience have questions?" If you stand up, introduce yourself, ask a well thought out question, you are now a public speaker. You have done a presentation to the same audience that the speakers on stage just spoke to. So, I see we've got a question from the audience. Thank you, Jennifer. How do you maintain your focus when there are technical difficulties before or during your presentation? Jennifer, I don't think I did. Number one, you got to have a sense of humor about it. Number two, you do everything you can to avoid the problems. I did attend the technical rehearsal. I have actually used this platform before, which I'm not sure why it didn't work today, but you do everything you can to avoid the technical issues. You have your producer's name on speed dial. You do everything you can. If something happens, you've got to laugh it off. And maybe you end up incorporating it into your presentation. Maybe you end up moving on. It's always a challenge to get back into the rhythm. Um, I actually did this presentation previously, and I will say that I'm going to go and compare the two presentations and see how off I was today versus other times. Imagine I'm pretty off. So, do you have any tips for doing your first presentation? Oh, yes, I do. Let's see here. Tips for first presentations. Number one, think very carefully about your audience. If it is your first time, it probably isn't the time to vault up on stage for a keynote. You want a friendly audience as much as possible for that first time. Speaking is something that we do, and I think a lot of people think about it as something confident people do. The reality is, most of us get on stage and do speaking engagements before we are fully confident. When you do a presentation and it goes well or goes okay, you are building your confidence. So you're not only demonstrating confidence, you're building it. So every time you get on stage and you succeed, you build your confidence for the next time. So you want to be successful that first time out. Also, give yourself grace if you are not successful. When I started my second company, Mass Innovation Nights, the first event that we did, I was a hot mess. These are grassroots social media powered events. And in April 2009, we did the first one. And I did all of the setup myself. I rolled out the tables. They were big circular tables. I carried in the bottles of water. I set up all of the presentations, and then I had to be the host. I had to be the person who stood up in front of the room and introduced the speakers. I got to say, I was a hot mess, literally and figuratively, because I was so sweaty. I had been really exerting myself. I got up in front of everybody and was so nervous that I sweated through my jacket. So I later saw video and pictures of me, and I kind of vowed to never look like that again. I definitely have. But each time I got better and better and better. And one of the things about running innovation nights for 130 events over 11 years was that I was doing much the same thing. So I was doing the same presentation. That's why you'll often see speakers having a signature presentation, because they're practicing the same one over and over again, and they are honing it each time they do it. So those are some of the presentations suggestions I have for tips for your first time out. Kelly, you're coming from an industry that doesn't require you to speak professionally. How could I learn to speak more professionally to match what my future employers and coworkers don't think? Oh, that's a good present. That's a great question. And one of the suggestions I will make, think about taking an improv class. I know this sounds a little out in left field, but number one, it's fun. You'll have a blast. Number two, you will feel comfortable on stage. Improv teaches you systems for dealing with surprises, for dealing with things that come in out of left field. It really helps you be comfortable on stage. So I think one of the things that one of the reasons I recommend it is more that comfort for you, for the speaker. I also tend to suggest that you watch other speakers, watch TEDx's, watch different interviews. You will get lots of tips from watching the best in the business. I will tell you, I got invited to do a TEDx with only a few days' notice. And the first thing I did is I sat down and I watched literally hours of TEDx's. I wanted to get the rhythm. I wanted to see what other people did. And that enabled me to feel comfortable going on stage and doing my own. So watch what other people do, take an improv class, and also surround yourself with other people who are on the same journey. We call it in Innovation Women, we call it having speaker friends. And we actually do a Friday morning speaker friends session on Zoom every single week where people gather together, they practice introducing themselves, they ask questions, and we have breakout rooms where they get to make friends. And I will tell you that having people that are on the same journey as you can share things that you learn because they're near peers. They will share what they've learned, and together you'll be stronger. Jennifer, how do you find opportunities for public speaking? I've had several opportunities in my company, but only one outside. Jennifer, I'm going to have to pay you off later because that is what Innovation Women does. However, I will tell you that one of the things about Innovation Women is we're not doing something that is rocket science. We are literally going and we are looking for calls for speakers. Call for speakers is the generic term you're going to use. And by the way, right now, I think Innovation Women has something like 1,000 opportunities open on the platform. So they are out there and they are in the wild, and you don't need to join what I do or anything like that, although we do make it easy. You can search for these yourself. You're going to go to Google. Google is your friend. You're going to put in the term call for speakers. Then you're going to further refine it with your area of expertise or your topic. If you want to stick close to home, you're going to put in the name of the major city near you. Maybe you're going to put in the year, because if you don't put in the year, you'll probably find old calls for speakers. Another little helpful hint is if you look at Google and you select the news category, often conferences and events will announce that the call for speakers is open. So they'll put out a press release. So you can actually check out the press releases in the news section as well as searching in Google normally. Okay, let's see here. Cassandra, I have a question. Where can you find opportunities to speak? We were just talking about that. Signing up for Tech Talks, submit a talk at a conference. I want to build and practice this skill as much as possible. Again, the call for speakers, that is your big thing. And almost every conference has a call for speakers. Understand the timing behind this. So if you are running an annual conference, you're probably putting out the call for speakers not too much after the previous year. So 2024 conference is right now. The call for speakers will probably go out in the next month or two for next year's event. So don't get discouraged if you're finding a lot of calls for speakers that are already closed. And there are tons of them out there in the world. You just need to find the one that is the right fit for you. And I'm going to put into the chat a link to the Innovation Women Speaker Friends. If you're signing up for the Innovation Women newsletter, we send out the link for Speaker Friends. Also, in the weekly newsletter, we share 5 different open opportunities every single week. So if you don't want to go searching on Google, we got some options for you. All right. Any other questions that I can answer before I kind of wrap us up? And by the way, this is a lesson in action. Yes, I've got a few more slides. So we've answered some questions. You never want to leave people with just the questions. Why is that? Because it's kind of like you're petering out. So you want to leave people with your strong voice ringing in their ears. You want to leave people on your own terms, not on a question that was asked by the audience. So I'm going to share just a few more speaking tips with you. Number one, as a speaker, it's our job to be likable. Even if you can't stand the fact that I could not figure out how to get on stage, I'm hoping that you like me and you are feeling like, yes, I did not disappoint. Number two, tell me a story. When I answer questions, I will often tell little mini stories. And that doesn't mean turn your whole presentation into a story. What it means is tell a story that illustrates and answers the questions. Number three, get excited, right? Nobody is going to be excited about your topic unless you're excited by it. And I have to admit, I am thoroughly excited about public speaking because I see the power of public speaking. I started Innovation Women 9 years ago because I saw how being on stage impacts everything from pay equity, funding for women-founded companies, the number of women in the boardroom, the number of women in the C-suite. Public speaking is something that I knew a little something about, and I felt it could have an impact on the whole world. Lose the words. Okay, I know it is tempting to put every single word on the slides. Don't do it. Don't resist the resist the temptation. Blah, 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 blah. All right. If you are putting every word that you are saying on your slides, people are not listening to you, they are reading. So, your best slides, yes, they might have a few words. And if you are explaining complex topics and subjects, you definitely will need a few words, but you can do so much with pictures and so much with images and charts and all the different ways that you don't have to spell it out on your slides. And the last point I want to make is rehearse. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Every time you do a presentation and you feel comfortable with your topic, even if things go wrong somewhere along the way, you can always kind of go back to, I know this topic. I have rehearsed it. My magic number is 8. I do every presentation before I get on stage 8 times so that even if I'm flustered, even if things went wrong, I can fall back on the rehearsals that I did. And often I will find phrases and whole paragraphs that just kind of fall from my lips because I have rehearsed and I know what I am doing. So I keep telling myself that anyway. All right. Um, so that is our last tip today. I am more than happy to stick around and answer a few more questions for anybody that wants to stick around. Um, I know that we didn't start off on the greatest foot today, but I appreciate so much all of your support. And for anybody that stuck around for a few extra minutes, definitely thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate you all and hope to connect with you on LinkedIn or through Innovation Women. And I really hope to see you all using your speaking voices, doing terrific presentations. Thank you again. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. And let's see here. Oh, again, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We do have a few minutes left on the session if you wanted to ask particular questions. So, and I'm just hoping I didn't skip over any by accident. So I'm just scrolling up to see. Uh, Thanks. And also, just a little tidbit, you are never going to screw up if you get finished a few minutes early. It's going over that makes people crazy because they've got places to be and other speakers to see. So make sure you finish on time or even a few minutes early. Also, when you're a speaker, often you speed up a little bit when you're nervous. So slow down. It's okay. You know, when you're timing yourself when you're rehearsing, just take into account that you might get a little faster. You also need to take into account that there might be audience reactions or questions that you hadn't anticipated. All right, awesome, everybody. Okay, we're going to let you all go. Take care, and thank you again for joining me today. Bye bye.